Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the webinar today titled Future Proof Your Infrastructure with Google Cloud Platform. I'm Vrinda. I work as a Director of Business Transformation at Sears. And for today's webinar, we have Jeff from Google, who is the customer engineer for the cloud platform product, and Shraddha, who is our teammate and customer engineer for the cloud platform product as well. What we wanted to cover today was kind of give all of you a glimpse of what cloud is and how exactly organizations are adapting to cloud, and then give you a quick glimpse about how Google Cloud Platform would be in a position to help out in your go-to-cloud journey. So with that, what I basically wanted to get started with is cloud is not necessarily something that is new for us all today. We're pretty much seeing most of the technological advancements touching our daily lives, right from applications that help us wake up and kind of track our sleep, all the way to tracking what is happening all around the world, and also making sure that we are able to complete our day-to-day tasks as planned on time, leveraging some of the cloud technologies that are already out there. What we've seen happening with this level of disruption in technology is that organizations are rapidly evolving, and the time it takes for someone to get started, like you're seeing nimble startups disrupting some of the larger enterprises, and primarily because they are fast and they're predominantly born cloud native. So what this particular session we wanted to focus on was, as an enterprise which has seen where you guys have the domain knowledge of what your industries are doing, how can you leverage some of these technologies yourselves and be the disruptor of your own organizations versus waiting and being blindsided by someone else coming in and then having to disrupt your particular organization. With that, some of the specifics that we wanted to cover today was a quick introduction about Sears, post which Jeff will give us a brief introduction about what is Google Cloud and how it spans across the different verticals within a particular organization in trying to help cloudify. We'll then jump into a detailed demo on Google Cloud Platform and look at exactly how enterprises can leverage the cloud technology, and then scale back on how exactly we can work with you all to help you move to cloud throughout your transformation journey. So I'll cover quickly introduction about Sears. We are a business process improvement company which helps futurify businesses, and I often get asked as to what is futurification, and exactly what I mentioned earlier is we help organizations stay relevant for the future, leveraging primarily Google Cloud technologies, as well as building on top of whatever technologies Google Cloud Platform has to offer. We specialize in cloud automation and analytics. We've been in this space for roughly over 12 plus years now, have a global presence of about 600 people, and anything related to driving your technological transformation, leveraging Google Cloud is where we will be able to help out. Our business model primarily is, these are just some of the recognized awards that we have. We are one of the largest partner with Google globally, but our business model primarily evolves around how can we truly drive digital transformation within an enterprise. We have it focused on four key areas that every organization experiences. And we start off by looking at how is it that your current operations and people are actually interacting within the organization, leverage some of the collaboration and data-driven technologies that we have built, or leverage some of the off-the-shelf technologies and kind of improve your work and operations. Then utilize the collaboration to kind of drive more culture and people process transformation. So are your employees collaborating more? Are they talking more openly within the organization? What kind of tools and technologies are you using to actually manage your workforce? Which eventually then translates into a better customer experience that we have seen. So once you have your own house in place, how do we then organize our focus and kind of narrow down to what additional services can be offered to the customer segments? We are seeing a very, very big change in the way customers are pursuing the businesses and what kind of services they need. Predominantly B2C customer mindset is what is coming into the B2B segment as well, where people want to track what is happening with my shipment on a regular basis. They want a very good mobile connectivity experience on an ongoing basis. So how do you take all those digital networks and come into the customer segment? And finally, how do you actually transform your entire business model? So if you're a retail giant and you're currently into more of a consumer-based model, then how can you go more digital? How can you leverage some of the endpoint technologies that can actually reach out more to the customers and drive rapid innovation within the cycles? So those four are generally the pillar blocks that we kind of approach a particular organization with, and leverage some of the technologies that Google have within the big data and IoT spaces to drive transformation. Some of the customers within the global space that we have worked with, we have a span of roughly about 1,300 plus clients that we closely work with, and have a good amount of exposure within traditional industries such as manufacturing, oil and gas, logistics and transportation, and retail primarily. Moving on, I will pass it on to Jeff, who would give a quick introduction to Google Cloud, and we'll take it from there.
Great. Thanks, Vrinda. I do appreciate everybody's time. I know everybody has a busy schedule, so I'll try to be brief. I'm going to go through about 13 or so slides, try to get through those pretty quick. Just a quick introduction. My name's Jeff Washburn. I'm a customer engineer here at Google, and I just want to share with you some high-level slides. If you're not familiar with Google platform, just to kind of introduce you to it, where do we play in this space, kind of what's our technology, and what do we have. So if you want to go on, yeah. So right now, starting with kind of like at the beginning, I guess you'd say, Google itself, we have the Google Cloud platform, but on top of that, our infrastructure and so forth. We're running search, we're running maps, and we're running all these different products that everybody uses on a daily basis. I mean, with that, we're servicing about 1 billion users each day, and these could be the requests, the API requests, the searches, and so forth. Moving on. The big thing here, we want to kind of focus in it now on the GCP Cloud and so forth. And what does that mean? What are we doing there? We're traditionally, I guess you'd say, Google hasn't been known for being in the enterprise, right? And we're trying to change that perception. And one of the things that we're doing is a major investment on the platform itself. And right here we've invested over almost $30 billion over the last 3 years in beefing up our infrastructure, bringing it up to not only standards and so forth, but making it a world-class, first-class infrastructure. On the next page here, this is a layout of what the infrastructure looks like, and it's important to note that Google owns all of the, not only the data centers, but all the communication in between the data centers itself, right? So the peering, the networks, and so forth. But why this is important is once you get on the Google network, you're on our backbone, and this backbone is going to traverse throughout the world, many redundant paths and so forth. So one, the traffic is going to be isolated from the general public, or the public internet, for example. So if you're running on our cloud and so forth, you could have a VM spun up in, say, the west region. You're one hop away from the next region that you spin up to the next VM and so forth. So you're going to have low latency, speed, and everything about Google right now has been focused on low latency and security. A few of the products and so forth, and kind of what Google Cloud means. It's kind of a hierarchy here, and Google Cloud is more than just your VMs and so forth. So kind of starting at the top and so forth, our Google Cloud represents our G Suite products, for example. So like your Gmail, your Drive, and then we have the Chrome browser, the Android OS, and so forth for mobility. Down into the next layer, we have our connected like Apigee and so forth. So this is like your API economy, a microservice and so forth, kind of taking legacy products and so forth and making them available through API calls out on the for your applications. Once you start getting into the next three levels here for like the app and the data and the infrastructure and so forth, now we're focused just on the GCP portion. So think of Google Cloud as GCP plus your Chrome, G Suite, Android, Apigee, and so forth. So within GCP, we have our compute layer, which would be your app engine. This is kind of what we consider serverless. So it would be like Cloud Functions, Google App Engine. Then we have compute engine. So this would be your infrastructure for like VMs, your networking pieces and so forth. And then container engine, this is going to be your Kubernetes. So that would be like the orchestration layer that you'd be running your Docker containers for your microservice deployment and so forth. On top of that, we have services that enhance, whether it be for your application and so forth. So we have like BigQuery, data flow, machine learning. These services tie in nicely to your applications. It traverses across the infrastructure that we showed you from before, basically to enhance your application, make it quicker, easier, faster, better. And then down below is our infrastructure. So things like cloud storage, the networking pieces, and the compute engine. So at that layer, you have complete control over your network. So if you need to do a VPC, a virtual private cloud, you can partition networks off. You can go through your network and set up firewall rules and so forth. The cloud storage is kind of a universal storage that a lot of the products and services can use. And this is good for, say, like you're doing a big data application. You need a big data store that you need just to, store a lot of the data. Well, BigQuery could then tie into that. You could query BigQuery, get the results out, and those result sets could be saved off to cloud storage, for example. You could use cloud storage for servicing up images, even HTML pages, and so forth. So on the next one here, let that page come up. So this one here is just kind of like, what are the pieces and the parts of the network, right? So we have the world's largest software-defined network, and what that means is you're not dealing with the hardware specifically. Everything is software-defined, from the network to the switches to the firewalls, everything about that, right? And what this gives you is consistency across the board, across the regions and the zones. So if you're to fire something up in one region, it's going to look the same across the board when you go throughout. So let me pick up the pace here so I don't put us behind schedule. On the next slide, this one here, I want to show the kind of what do we do from the data analytics, on the platform. This is kind of a big topic for us right now, especially in the spaces that we're playing. So on the database side, we have no SQL databases. That would be like our data store to the SQL store databases. So Cloud SQL is powered by MySQL underneath the covers. We got Cloud Data Store, Bigtable, Cache. On the big data side, BigQuery, and a lot of these products, if I don't have the slide in there, but a lot of things are created from open source. And so what Google did is they created a lot of tools internally then they open source those, and now we're making them publicly available as services and so forth, right? So behind the scenes of like Hadoop, for example, that was an internal project within Google. We open sourced it, and now we have a product, a service within Google called Dataproc, right? So that's our managed service of Hadoop, right? So there's a lot of, another example would be TensorFlow. So that would be our cloud machine learning aspect, right? Within the machine learning, we have some predefined models for like the cloud speech, the translate, the vision API. These are all models that have already been trained to do visual recognition, for example, in the cloud vision API. You can do machine learning, create your own model. So we have it as a service, so machine learning engine. You could go and create your own models and deploy things out if you wanted to. Moving on. The key thing here is the infrastructure. We've focused and put a lot of emphasis on our infrastructure and what does that do for customers. There's other competitors out in that space, in the cloud space. They do things differently, right? We believe that having the control over the network, lighting up the fiber cables and so forth, that is extremely important. That is something that we focus on, that we want all the data to traverse through our network and not dump it off to the internet, but keep it internally, right? This gives us complete control, gives you the speed and security that we can offer that's bar none to anybody else. I mentioned security. So in this one here, can't stress enough what security means. For example, on our cloud storage, all the data is going to be transmitted. It's going to be encrypted in transit as well as at rest. And not only is it encrypted, but it's going to be sharded off. So, for example, you could have something stored on cloud storage. You're going to get bits and pieces of it spread throughout. So even if a hard drive, for example, is compromised, they're only going to get bits and pieces of the information. And on top of that, it's going to be encrypted. I have a next slide. Yeah, on the next one, this talks about all the third-party audits and certifications. We do go through a series of audits that are required, kind of industry standards and so forth. We do hit on all those. These are forever changing, so we're always looking at how can we, like for example, FedRAMP is a tough certification to get, but we're always looking at improving our certification as well as our policy audits. When it comes to managed services, what Google offers and so forth, like our cloud object storage, this is the Google Cloud Storage and so forth. Here you would store, it could be binary data, it could be text data, HTML data, and so forth. Whatever your data store, whatever that's going to represent, right? It could be results from like subsurface querying from well mines, an example out in the oil field, anything to images that you serve up if you're just going to be a hosting site for images and so forth, right? So you define the objects and how you want to store them. It's very quick, very reliable. And speed-wise, it's very quick. We have key value stores. We have non-relational databases to relational databases, and then the world, what everybody knows it says right now on the warehousing side is BigQuery. So BigQuery, you can do mass amounts of petabytes, scale databases, query those results in mere seconds to get the results back. Now, when it comes to partnering and so, who you pick and so forth, like Sears, again, they're leveraging our infrastructure, right? They're bringing their expertise and things that they know, the ins and outs of the cloud, how to best deploy the application, leveraging, our investment that we put into the cloud, as well as, the security. On top of that, Google's very committed to open standards. A lot of the software that we create internally then is open sourced, released out to the public, and then we'll release that or have a managed service behind it. And then lastly, just a quick, blurb, getting started with GCP and so forth, kind of like where do I jump in, kind of what's my entry point. So it could be anywhere from, you don't have to do a full lift and shift of an application that I have in-house or on-prem and I want to move over. You could leverage some of the services to start off, for example, like analytics, big data, archiving, utilizing the cloud storage aspects, dev test. So you can bring up, keep production on-prem and just start doing dev testing and spin up VMs that way. Same thing on the compute workload. So we offer different levels of compute horsepower, I guess you'd say. We have CPU availability where you can just spin up like preemptive VMs and say, I want 50,000 cores available to do some work, spin those up really quick, and then take those offline to GPUs. So if you're into for the graphical processing units, for analytics, and then we also have specific chipsets that were for TensorFlow. So those are called TPUs. Again, that's just a quick overview of GCP. The focus of this presentation is to kind of go through and let Shraddha go through and give you a in-depth or a deep dive on the platform. So I'll stop there. I'll turn it over, and I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi guys, my name is Shraddha, and I will be giving a deep dive into Google's infrastructure side of the picture. Hi guys, my name is Shraddha. Thank you, Jeff, for a quick introduction to Google Cloud, and I will be covering some part of what Jeff just now conveyed. So to start with, when you hit console.cloud.google.com, the default dashboard of your cloud, you will be able to see a window like this. Now, there are a couple of points to note on this window. First is that there is something called as a project name, which is unique to your organization as such. So when you are looking at this window, you will know that a project is having a unique identifier. Now, this identifier is important because if you're using some other piece in Google's cloud platform, let's say if you're using App Engine, wherein you're developing some application and you need to connect to your backend services, you will be using this ID as the root of your project. Now, inside of Google Cloud Platform, you can create multiple organizations, and inside of those organizations, you can create multiple projects. Now, why this is important? It might happen that you are having multiple projects in your organization, and every project is having different developers and different testers and different teams altogether, and you do not want to share access, or you do not want to have any role-related issues getting reported in the future. So in that case, what you would want to do is just create multiple projects, and then you can assign roles to your developers or to your teams specific to the projects. So for instance, I have my first project created in Sears.com organization. I have Exchange migration project created in some other organization. Now, getting back to the dashboard. On the dashboard, you can see the Google Cloud Platform. Over here, basically, it gives you an insight about how your components that you're leveraging are performing at that point. So right now, I'm not using any of the App Engine services. It is showing me blank graph. But if you take a look at Compute Engine, it will show that I have one instance running, which is performing like in this manner currently. Also, it will show that if I have Cloud SQL service running, the storage is used in Cloud SQL part of the picture. So having said that, you can totally customize this dashboard to your need. So let's say if I do not want to see error reportings on my dashboard, but then I want to keep up with the news that are coming up on Google Cloud Platform, I may just turn this on and just click done, and you have customized your dashboard. So another important part of any cloud service provider that you use is the billing part. So in Google, a unique billing account ID gets generated for your account, which you can use in future to refer to your invoices that get populated. Moving on. So as Jeff was saying, when it comes to infrastructure offering in Google Cloud Platform, there is something called as Compute Engine that is there. Now this feature is equivalent to that of EC2 in Amazon. Here basically you can create as many machines as you would want, and the configuration offered is the highest in all clouds so far. And then creating this instance is really easy. If you just need to know basic terms, and you can create an instance in literally 4 minutes. So I'll quickly show you how to create an instance. Coming on this window right now, I'm having one instance running, so you will be able to see one instance running. So if you just click on this instance, you can also monitor how this instance is doing in 1 hour, 6 hours, and so on. So getting back to create instance part of the picture. So after I hit on create a compute engine instance, it will give us a form asking basic information to create an instance. So you will need to give a name to your instance. Now this name is unique within the project and not within the entire Google Cloud platform. So you can have a machine with same name in multiple projects. Apart from this, there is a concept of regions and zones inside Google Cloud. So as Jeff was telling us about the global network that Google has laid out, one distinguishing feature that Google has is that they have opened the infrastructure which Google itself is using for their own applications. So you are getting the same infrastructure that runs google.com, the search engine, or Google Maps, or Gmail itself. So entire architecture is laid out in such a way that there are multiple regions. So let's say North America, South America, and then Europe, Asia. And then inside of every region, there are zones. Now, there are two things to note in here. One is zonal resource and one is regional resource. So it might happen that you have a global presence and there is some connectivity between one region to the other, and you would want to provision some of the resources which should be accessible within these regions. So you can provision resources basis that or basis zones. So if I select US Central 1 here, there is next thing that you should be aware of, that is machine type. So talking about machine types, Google has a wide range of machine offerings, which basically work on two parameters. One is the number of CPUs you can have. So we call it as virtual CPUs in here, and the size of RAM you can have. So basis your workloads, it might be the case that some of your applications need higher memory resources, whereas some resources just need multiple CPUs and not much of the memory as such. So Google has three types of machine offerings. One is the predefined machine, which again is categorized into standard type, high memory type, and high CPU type. Then there is preemptible machines that Jeff was talking about. So preemptible machines, why these are needed? So let's say you have some application which is running on which is running Hadoop, and then it might happen that this particular Hadoop application needs to spin up 10 machines only for a couple of hours. So it does not make sense to have resources allocated to you, dedicated to your application, which are running 24/7 into 30 days, because the cost will be approximately, if you provision one machine with one CPU and 3.75 gigs of RAM, it will be approximately $24. And if you just move that to a preemptible instance, the cost will be subsequently lower. So why you should have preemptibility is that in applications wherein you don't really need machines for more than 24 hours, you can go for these preemptible machines. So how Google is exactly offering that to you is, so basically at data centers, there might be some resources which are not really being used. So those resources are just loaned out to you, and then that is called as preemptibility. So this concept is very similar to AWS's spot instances. So once you turn this thing on, basically, if you take a look at the cost now, this is reduced to $7 a month, which was approximately $25 a month. So that difference preemptible machine makes. Apart from this, Sometimes it might happen that there are predefined configurations, machine types that are offered to you already. But then for some specific business need, it might happen that you don't really need one CPU, but then you need two CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. So this is kind of a distinguishing feature again, which is available only with Google. And you can customize your machine size in here. You just put two CPUs, and then you can configure your memory, and then you can accordingly have a custom machine defined for you. So again, when you're creating a custom machine type, you cannot select an abrupt uh, size as such. So if you have one shared core or one vCPU, and if you try and put 128 gigs of RAM, the system will not let you add it because that is not a good configuration. So the machine learning API that we just came across, so this API basically keeps track of all these things and how exactly these things can be laid out. So guys, if you have any questions, in meanwhile, you can ping those on the YouTube, or you can go to the link given for QA. So I'm assuming no questions so far, and I'll move forward. So what are the advantages of going with infrastructure on Google Cloud? So first advantage is pricing. We have been talking about pricing a whole lot, and there is something called a sustained usage discount that applies to your machines in Google. So what do we mean by sustained usage discount? So basically, Google calculates the number of hours that you are using the machine for. So if you're using your machine 24/7 into 30 days, approximately 720 hours, Google will give you straight 30% discount on that machine. Now, this discount applies regardless of any sort of lock-in. So even if you have not signed any contract or any vendor lock-in sort of thing, you still can avail, you are automatically availed this discount. So in your invoice, you will be able to see a 30% discount applied for your machine. Now again, Google wants to give the best possible discount to you. So what we generally do is, so let's say if there are multiple machines, multiple N1 standard one machines running inside of one zone, and then it might happen that some of the machines you are turning on and off according to your business need. So what Google generally does is it calculates the number of hours spent by a block of machines of same type within the same region, and against of those hours you are given again sustained usage discount. So this policy works best because if you are not using one machine for 24/7 into 30 days, but you are using two machines which are again calculating up to 720 hours, you can still get 30% discount. Then there's something called as committed use discount, which is, I think, omnipresent. So if you sign a contract, if you sign up for 1 year or 3 years, you can get up to 50 to 60% discounts on top of all this. Apart from this, there is a new feature which has got added, which is recommendation running on top of compute engine. So what Google does is, by using machine learning algorithms and APIs that now have gone open source, they keep on monitoring, Google keeps on monitoring if your machine is getting underutilized. So if the machine is getting underutilized, under recommendation tab, you will be able to see that you can save up to 25 bucks a month or whatever amount a month if you go ahead with this configuration of the machine. So as you can see, there's a Windows instance running in Asia South 1 in this project, and I'm not really using the whole capability of 1 CPU and 4 gigs of RAM a month. So it popped up a recommendation saying that maybe if you use 1 CPU and 4 GB RAM instead, you will save approximately $25. So if I want to further optimize this or further customize this, I can do that. If not, it's up to you whether you want to take this recommendation and downgrade your machine, or you just want to dismiss this recommendation and go ahead and continue using the machine that you have. Now, why this feature is important? Let's say if you have 200 servers running in your infrastructure, and then it's very difficult to keep a check on every graph and every metric that gets popped up, which shows you whether the machine is being underutilized or overutilized. So this is very important and very good feature that you can leverage, and you can save some cost in here. Apart from this, when you are, so if you're using any traditional environment or any other environment, and you are SSHing into instances via some APIs or a terminal or web UI for that matter, those things remain same regardless of whether you move on cloud or not. So you, all that you have to do is just click on SSH and then just allow this pop. And if you have Chrome running on your system, it will just show you a window which wherein you can SSH into that instance. So, so creating an instance and then SSHing into it or logging on to that instance, it takes about 6 minutes and your server is up and running. Apart from this, Jeff also talked about Cloud SQL feature of Google Cloud Platform. Cloud SQL is a managed database service which is offered by Google, and right now it supports MySQL and PostgreSQL is in beta. So I would quickly want to show you how does Cloud SQL work and why is it different than that of existing services. So with second generation of Cloud SQL, you can have up to 2 TB of database running on Cloud SQL server, where you can use Cloud SQL. So in cases wherein you are having e-commerce applications running or some CRM applications or WordPress-based sites wherein data gets generated real quick, and then the latency should be minimum and response time should also be quick. In that case, you can use a managed SQL service wherein you can focus on developing application and not really worry about the database side of the picture. Now again, when you are creating any infrastructure for any architecture for that matter, there are three things that come into the picture. One is web server, which compute engine will take care of. On top of this compute engine, again, you can have autoscaler or load balancer put on, which will take care of the load coming onto your web applications or applications that are deployed on compute engine. You can have there is application layer which will basically connect with database, and you can have Bastion host or these concepts deployed or subnet or firewall configured in a manner that your database and applications or server is not exposed to the external world. Then comes the database side of the picture, wherein if you do it on premise or if you do it with other providers, you will have to make sure that your database architecture is also in check, meaning that you have a read replica of your instance, you have a failover point. So let's say if suddenly there's a Black Friday deal that you're rolling out and suddenly you're getting lots and lots of hits on your web, then load balancer and autoscaler might take care of that. But when you're going to the payment step or add to cart step, where the database sessions are getting bound, at that time, if you have only one database server running or individual database servers running, in that case, you might come across some downtime, or your user's session will be terminated, some glitch of that sort. So in that case, we basically make use of the read replica concept, which is nothing but a replica of your database server, and applications can have read access to that database. And failover point is nothing but if your server, the master server itself has failed, it will go to the failover server and your user will not have any downtime and will not even come to know that his response is coming now from second server. Although these things are stateful, you will still be able to see the high availability and highest level of performance on top of this. So creating these SQL Server instances again takes a few minutes, and within those few minutes you can have your master server running. Now, why you should go with a managed service? I told you a couple of reasons, and the next subsequent reasons are about the way you manage your database. Create a new user and assign only write role or only read role to that particular user. You can do that from the UI itself. You don't need to go on the terminal or go on the client database side and do that. Also, when updates are rolled out, so let's say MySQL 5.6 version you're using, and MySQL rolls out the next version of it, the automatic patch is updated over here. Apart from this, creating databases, taking backups of the data that is there on the server, you can do all of that from this panel itself. So you don't really need to get on the server and do it from there. Apart from this, managing your read replica and failover replica and understanding the console is pretty straightforward. So another advantage of going with Google is that the UI is really simple. So even if you don't have any in-house capability of team which has worked on cloud before, or haven't really seen how servers are configured or things like that, anybody can start working on these. And then it's very easy to understand that this is a master server, and there's a failover point, and there is a replica created on that machine. So if you have multiple servers and multiple replicas and failover points, those will get added as a tree over here. Apart from this, you can also see how your server is doing over here, like on the same page itself. And these graphs are unique to every server that you provision. So if you have a read replica, it will have a different graph. You can see memory utilization here. You can see how many MySQL queries are being run every hour, every second. For that matter, if you drill down to the Stack Overflow, the Stack Driver matrix, you can see those logs as well. Apart from this, I think I'm running out of time here, so I'll quickly show some interesting APIs that Google has rolled out with ML learning. So there's a vision API that was rolled out currently and rolled out a couple of days ago. And then this basically API will let you analyze an image and get context out of it. Use an API. So if you have an application wherein you need to understand how exactly the image-based applications work, if you want to render image, or if you want to get text out of some images, let's say OCR-based application, then you can use Vision API. Or if you want to get some insight on your image, you can use it. So just for the demo, I had added this image on the try it function, and then this is basically Earth's picture. And then once you upload this, you will be able to see that these are the tags that can get associated on this image. You can also see the web references. So you can see that it's Earth, it's Aurora, and light, and so on. And if you click on each of these links, you can go to the exact web page and see how it works. You can also see the some properties of this image. You can see which are the dominant colors and which are the crop hints and so on. And also there's this feature called as safe search. So it might happen that at times you want to block certain content on your web page, and basis the image vision API, you can just see that it has some tags, and it will give you a value like very unlikely, likely, and very likely. And then it will have some categories like adult, spoof, or medical, and so on. And then basis that, you can edit out your applications in the way you need. Apart from Vision API, there is one more API that is offered, which is NLP, the Natural Language Processing. You might have heard that word recently. And then these sort of applications basically are used want to, let's say, run some sentiment analysis on the customer's feedback that you're getting, or some textual basis insight if you want to get from your customers, then you can use NLP. And that all that you have to do is use this API and click on analysis, and it will show you that, for example, if I'm passing this text over here, it will pick up the context of the sentence. It will say that Google is an organization, or users are people, or there's a phone mentioned in here, there's an Android thing mentioned in here, and it will show score of that sentence. It will show the magnitude, that means the strength of that particular word which occurred in the entire sentence. Apart from that, you might have heard about sentiment analysis. Twitter sentiment analysis is a classic example. So over here, you can see that whether this sentence is positive or negative, and so on. You can also alternatively see the syntax of the sentence and how exactly it was formed. So with NLP API, you can do a lot of analysis, and you don't really need to be a data scientist to understand, to actually uh, do these programs as such. Apart from this, there are multiple APIs which I won't be able to touch base in this short time. So there's a speech API which you can use in applications. For, let's say if there is an application you're developing for a blind person and you want to translate from speech to text in any language. So there are like many languages that are supported by Google Speech API. So you could use that. Apart from this, there are app engine offerings wherein you are given with a platform, and all that you can do is you have to do is develop your applications, and you don't need to worry about the backend that goes in the background. So meaning that you just code your application and your infrastructure part will be taken care of. So if you have there's a game Pokemon Go which launched a couple of months ago, and that was entirely developed on App Engine. In-house at Sears, we have developed a couple of applications on top of App Engine. Then we are using Compute Engine for our own business need as well. Apart from that, as Jeff was talking about cloud storage, this is another feature that is available within Google Cloud. If you want to back up large data and data that spans from few petabytes, you can use you can use cloud storage, which offers the minimum latency and response time and quick retrieval of data with price ranging from 1 cent per GB. So if you are a media company who needs to store some videos and pictures and audio files on cloud, you might would want to use cloud storage. So on that note, I would conclude my part. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks, Shraddha. That was quite detailed. And we do have some questions that have come in. So before I pass it on to Jeff to kind of address those questions, as well as look at some of the items that we are pending, I think one key question that we usually get after we are at this stage is what next? How do we get started as an organization, as an enterprise that is kind of driving the change? Where do we start? And as you saw, there are quite a few of these interesting use cases that could come up, right? If you're using Vision API, pretty much every organization has some kind of back office processing, and where we have seen that most successful is do some kind of OCR applications and read all the invoices that you're getting from all your vendors, centralize it and completely automate those functions from an accounts payables perspective. Or if you're a jewelry company or any kind of product catalog company where you're a manufacturer and you need to pass on the designs or catalogs within the organization, Vision API has proven to be super helpful and extremely extremely fast in terms of analyzing what features worked in the past, what kind of designs might work better given what is happening in the industry, and then kind of just expedite your overall go-to-market with a new product or with a new design. So with all these multiple applications happening there, I think the only thing that you could miss out is if you don't want to take a leap and kind of try these things out and get started. And like Jeff mentioned earlier, we don't necessarily need to do the entire lift and shift right away, but a good use case, a small pocketed initiative is something that could be a good proof of concept initially, and then we build on top of it. So what we recommend organizations doing quickly is we have this approach of getting to an assessment phase first, then moving to a planning phase, the actual deployment, and then optimizing it. And these are professional services that are provided in conjunction with Google and along with the partner community as well, wherein we would come in, look at, you can move on to the next slide, look at what kind of requirements are there. It's a very small workshop that generally gets conducted if you're a large enough organization to identify, okay, what's possible and what's needed. both Google and Search engineers would be in a place to look at your different use cases. We are generally pretty candid on which ones might be extremely good on top of GCP, and going through that journey with you in terms of planning and helping on exactly what the detailed architecture needs to be, what kind of approach needs to be there, and ultimately taking you through the deployment phase, by beginning with doing a small POC and then gradually rolling that out to the next stage. And throughout the journey, there is generally a technical account manager who's assigned to your particular account to drive this entire engagement journey. There could also be some organizations who are pretty clear, who already have the skill set internally to kind of drive these changes, which is where the help generally is to kind of get your teams up to speed on the Google Cloud Platforms ecosystem, keep you updated on what other technologies are out there, what solutions can be used, and wherein you could deploy themselves internally. And we generally handhold up until the planning phase itself. So this generally is a good roadmap for kind of getting started, getting the conversations going internally. If you haven't yet started any cloud exploration at all, it would be a good time to kind of get going. And if you're already within your cloud journey, you're already on AWS or Azure, we are super welcome in terms of having a multi-cloud conversation, because we truly believe that um, there are certain strengths that GCP has, which should be leveraged by each and every organization. And we would be in a position to help out, not just by telling you that what you should be doing, but then actually handholding you to also implement those kind of changes. With that, I know we have about 8 minutes to go. Jeff, over back to you, and we could probably go through some of the questions. And we will be in a position to share out the presentation at the end of the deck, so that everyone has that handy.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you, Vrinda. On this here, I'll just do 2 minutes on the references, then we go through the questions. On this deck, you'll see some references in the back that you can go through and just kind of get an idea of where Google Cloud is being applied, the customers, the type of customers that we're working with, and so forth. This isn't an end-all, be-all. And there's probably about 6 or 7, I don't know, references in here, and I'm not going to touch on those. I can share out my screen here. There's an external link. Let me do that real quick and see if you guys can't see mine. Are you guys able to see my screen now?
Yes, Jeff.
Okay, so this one here, if you take note of the site, cloud.google.com/customers, this is an external site here that you get more information on customer success stories and so forth. One last piece before the questions is the Google pricing calculator. This one here, you can just go in and do a quick search, Google Cloud Pricing Calculator. It'll pull this, about the 4th one down right after the ads. This here, you can go in, you can put in like the size of the VM, how much memory, if you need GPUs, as well as the location. So right here, the data center location, there's a drop down. You can define your network or your VMs in whatever zone. So things are divided up into regions, like the East, the West, Asia, Europe, and stuff like that. And then inside of those regions are zones, and those are for redundancy reasons and so forth, right? So you can define where you want your VMs to live, where you want your app to be deployed, and so forth. So with that kind of leads into one of the questions that I saw, which was, can I have complete independence to choose regions on GCP where I'd like to host my infrastructure? So yes, you can go through. Now, on the VMs and so forth, absolutely. When it comes to consuming the services, though, like the managed services of, say, like Dataproc, BigQuery, and so forth, you don't define where those live, right? You're just going to consume those resources. Kubernetes, there you do define the regions and so forth where you want Kubernetes. App Engine, I believe that one is just more of a serverless type aspect. I'll have to double check. Actually, I haven't deployed out an App Engine, but you can see through the UI as you go through. You know, there's certain choices that you have to select in order to create those services.
App Engine is serverless, Jeff, so they won't need to select any.
Yeah, that you won't select a region. Yeah, so that's all hosted and maintained on the platform itself. Let's try to get through these. The next one, as an AWS customer, what kind of benefits can I realize by using GCP? So this is kind of open-ended, right? It's going to depend on where you're at in the journey, what your application, what you're doing. It could be things from cost benefit, could be things from speed. It could be how your application is deployed, how you consume those services. It could be the types of services that you're using. I mean, all of our services, there are some overlap in comparison to, say, like what AWS has. And to go through, like who's better, who's not, and so forth, that doesn't make sense as much as it is what is it that you're trying to accomplish and what is it that you want to do. And you want to look at those feature sets as far as what's available, right? BigQuery it's best in its class on certain aspects, right? But there's going to be a comparable product on other cloud providers that you're like, well, this does it better, right? So we're not trying to go through and be the best at everything on every single point, right? So you would have to look at it and kind of get an idea of if you're simply deploying an application, right? Just a simple app, then that may simply come down to the tools that you plug in, right? Whether you're using Chef or Puppet or something like that for deployment mechanisms, how easy it is to integrate, how easy it is. A big thing for us is the IAM controls, the identity access and management, right? Of those, like who has access to the resources, who can do certain things on the platform, right? So it could be, for some people, it's the organization, right? You have your org level. Then underneath that, you can define folders and projects, and everything for us on GCP is rolled up to the project level when it comes to pricing, right? So some people find that a huge benefit. Again, it's not going to be a silver bullet that this is the deciding factor. So it might be a conversation to have, outside of this setting here to kind of see what you're doing on AWS to see if, moving over to GCP. And the other thing is a lot of people use both or multiple cloud vendors at the same time, right? They don't want to be locked in. So it could be the combination of the two that makes sense for you.
On an average,
Yep,
though, purely if you're an AWS customer and majority of your workloads are within the infrastructure and storage space, given the experience that we have seen, there's approximately a 20 to 25% cost benefit that we have seen from switching from AWS to GCP on the infrastructure.
Yeah, one of the things that was mentioned earlier were the discounts, and those are automatically priced into Google. You have the sustained use discount, which if you use it over a period of time, you have the inferred instance discount, which will kind of aggregate things together and try to get you the best discount. Committed use discount, and these are all that was already mentioned, but just to recap that, on the committed use discount is just, hey, I'll commit to this much resources for a year. And then lastly is, we have the preemptive VMs. Those are about 80% off the I guess it's kind of like the list price of VMs. You'd get them for no more than like 24 hours type thing, in the sense that VM will disappear. But if your workload can support that and can support VMs coming in and out, then preemptive VMs are a good choice. Can't I directly get on GCP? Why should I go with a partner? I'll answer this one first, then I'll let the Sears folks jump in on that one. So there's a lot of ways at which you consume GCP. Do you have to use a partner? Absolutely not. You could come in and just start your application. Why partners like Sears and so forth are important, though, is as you're going through the journey and time, resources, the experience that comes with it, there's a lot of different factors involved why people do want to use a business partner. When it comes to just the expertise that they can provide, the speed at which they can deliver, and the support for which they provide. But Sears, please, jump in on this one.
No, I think you pretty much covered it. It's primarily the fact that with Google, they would be responsible for the overall engineering. With a partner coming into play, you'll have white glove support on an ongoing basis for your entire journey.
Excellent. Let's send them in here. How does the technical and functional support function? Let me come back to that. I'm not clear on that question. If you guys want to review that, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Can a GCP resource, example VM, be shared between different projects within the same organization? So it's not so much shared as much as it is who has access to that VM, right? So again, the charges is rolled up to the project level. So if you have your, let's just have a dev in a production project. So your VM could live in dev, right? But if you want to utilize that inside of production, then the people that you want to have access. So yes, you can access, and a lot of things are going to influence that that answer, which is, does your network support that? Can the network from production go over and talk to the dev network, for example, where the VM lives? So you can use it. I think you'd want to look at your scenario of how you have things deployed and if that makes sense, right? Last one here. There have been cases in the past where data was leaked at times by employees of the organization themselves. What security measures does GCP have to prevent this, and what encryption measures does GCP use to prevent unauthorized access to sensitive data? Okay, so on that, you could be referring to things that have been out, published within Google itself, right? And so GCP is a product of Google and so forth. Now, all the data and so forth that you're having, like whether it be BigQuery, cloud storage and so forth, is encrypted in transit and at rest. We can't go in and look at your data. The other aspect is we do have encryption keys. One can be managed by Google, but they also have customer managed keys as well. So if you want to do a key managed service and so forth, you can do that. So if you lost the keys, we can't do anything for you. Security is top priority and so forth, so none of the data is mined and so forth like that, right? We are over on time. I want to be cognizant of that, so let me know what we need to do.
Perfect. I think, Jeff, that was good. Just circling back to the technical and functional support question, there are two ways. Google does offer some standard technical support after you're live, but then predominantly the support functions are through the partner community, unless we are still within the phase of transitioning and making sure that you're still going live. And it really depends on what type of application you're using. Whether it's App Engine, Compute Engine, and there are various services around it. So we'll include some of those details and links as a part of the follow-up presentation that will be sent out. Perfect. I think in the interest of time, we are about 3 minutes overdue. If there are no more questions, thank you very much, everyone, for dialing in. We appreciate your time, and we hope that this was a helpful session. We will be more than happy to be in touch and take your cloud journey forward with Google Cloud Platform. Thanks all.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.